Welcome to the K-State Insiders, your Kansas State sports show. Now, let's head into the studio.
Welcome in here to the K-State Insiders. I'm Ryan Gilbert. We've got a little bit of a different crew today. No Fitz. We've got Cole and Grant from the GoPowercat staff repping, as always, our special guest, our good buddy Wyatt Wheeler from Topeka, Capital Journal, the Salina.
I don't even know. The USA Today network,
Yeah.
Topeka Capital Journal. I think USA Today signs my checks, so let's go with them. I like them the most.
There we go. Well, the newest guy on the beat joins us. We love having you around, man. We'll start with you. Basketball's been a lot of fun this year, hasn't it?
Yeah, man. It's been if there was ever a year to start covering Kansas State, it was this one. So it was an interesting football season. It's been the basketball season from hell. I've been able to quickly recognize. I've covered a lot of crap before for some bad basketball teams, and this has taken the cake, man. This year has been something else. So there's hope ahead. That's where you make the coaching move, and I'm sure we'll get into it soon. But we're going to be looking for what's next for this program. Try to get it back to where it should be.
Yeah, Cole and Grant, before we let you guys go, I mean, all three of us, we've covered Kansas State, period. That's really the only team we've ever been exposed to. Wyatt, I know you've talked about the word like dysfunctional with this basketball team. Put it into perspective how much, I don't want to say different because this has just been one disastrous season, but this is much more, like I said, different than anything you've really ever covered.
Yeah, I've covered some weird stuff, whether it's when I covered Missouri State, I covered that for about 10 years. And, there was one season where coaches brought in, those cryotherapy machines it was just kind of a blown up, like mobile one. I guess one of the coaches said, "Hey, take off your shoes and socks," to a couple of the tall guys and said, "Now get in there." And two of them had blisters all over their feet after they stepped in there, almost needed them amputated while the coach is on the hot seat, and they were picked to finish first in the league. And just stuff like that keeps going on and on, whether it's near amputations, coach getting into it with media afterwards. And, it's just years and years of that stuff. And never have covered an NCAA tournament team, but just going into this to where you're like, okay, the boss has pitched me on, okay, you're going to be covering a team that has a high NIL budget. They spend a lot of money. I've covered a game that PJ Haggerty played when he was at Tulsa, so was very familiar with his game and everything. And there was some stuff to like on paper. I know there were some flaws in some of the roster building, but it's just like, well, you're going to get some fun basketball at the very least. And it's been anything but, especially after, there was that last non-conference game where they're struggling with one of those, what was that, a Monroe team, something like that, just struggling to put them away. And then you get in the Big 12 play, and it's just been disastrous to where, you don't feel like you're covering the games as much anymore. And that's just a pregame show to whatever in the world's going to happen afterwards. They cut ties with Jerome Tang after about 2 weeks of that. Matthew Driscoll has been interesting the last few weeks. Just kind of keep talking about Jerome Tang afterwards and making the references to the Baylor family and everything while he's at Kansas State, but calmed it down a little bit and had a normal day the other night with the loss to TCU, which was kind of refreshing. So been a heck of a year, and it's just like I've asked you guys multiple times, how did this team make an Elite Eight? It's just how did this crew lead them to an Elite Eight to where it's just like I have no idea how that works. So that's pretty impressive on what those players were able to do that first year under the Tang regime.
Yeah, if you throw darts at a dartboard, you can get bullseyes, but that bullseye little area is pretty small, and the rest of the dartboard can give you what you saw over the last 3 years. And yeah, like people with my double deliveries that I do, guys, some people get angry that I'm trying to take shots at Jerome Tang or I need to focus on this team right now. You hit the nail on the head, Wyatt. Like, people don't really care about this team. People care about the future of K-State basketball. We're trying to get creative with our coverage here on GoPowercat. We'll get into some, coaching search stuff later on. But the games right now, Wyatt, trust us, this is not how Kansas State's program is supposed to be. Cole, you were in Manhattan this weekend. You were there in person. Your overall thoughts from that game, that loss against TCU, and Kansas State, again, the same story in Fort Worth, ran out of gas late.
Yeah. Can I cuss on this podcast?
Sure.
I don't give a shit about the game. Honestly, that's where I think I am. I think that's where a lot of people are. And why you bring up a good point. Like the story is not about the game. And so I'm going to answer your question, Gilbert. I'm going to do my little prelude to that. I think the story is about, first of all, I was really impressed with the turnout of the fans, considering this team has won 2 games in conference. They fired their coach. We all know the story. They're playing for literally nothing. And there's been some people who've said that K-State fans are starting to get apathetic, but I actually think it's the exact opposite. I think this fan base is so passionate that it doesn't matter who is playing for this team. There is going to be your fans who are going to show up regardless of who's coaching, regardless of who's wearing the jersey. And I think that's incredibly commendable because there's not a lot of programs out there who would have the fan support that this program does. Go to Utah, look and see the crowds that they get. Go to Stillwater and look and see the crowds that they get. And they're a better team than K-State. But K-State fans are so invested into their program. Sure, tomorrow night, the crowd's not going to be very good. Like, it's hard. Even if this team was average, it wouldn't be a very good crowd because of the location where Manhattan is. But for a weekend game, I was really actually impressed with the crowd turnout and just people, they wear their purple and they go and support their team. And I think that's really commendable. So as far as the game actually goes, like they're not a very good team. They fought. They just don't have enough to compete with teams who are better than them. Like at the end of the day, that's what it is. We know the deficiencies in the game. They don't have big men who can, who can hang down low. They're not really good if they're not making their 3-pointers. They turn the ball over too much. And the biggest thing is they didn't get to the foul line. So we know all these things, and that's how they lost the game. It's the same story. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to where does this program go from here? And I think that the fan support is going to continue to stay there. And if it does, then whatever happens, it's going to be an improvement.
Grant, you were a freshman at Kansas State when Jerome Tang went to the Elite Eight. You're thinking, all right, this is going to be a fun college experience for me between being a fan and working in media. And ever since that first year, it's just gone straight downhill.
Yeah. You said it. I thought I was going to be in for an awesome college experience, especially paired with football, winning the Big 12 championship that year as well. But certainly a disappointment. And Wyatt touched on earlier, I can't believe that this coaching staff led this team to an Elite Eight that freshman year after watching the last couple of years and just how bad they've been. And it certainly makes you think how good were Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel, because I don't think this coaching staff really is all that great, and we all know that. And I'm excited to see what the coaching changes are going to be and who we're going to go get. And I think Cole said at one of our group chats the other day, can we get a new coach every year? Because this coaching search and hot boards have been so fun between football and basketball as well. But yeah, you said it, Gilbert, not me. But I wish I could relive that freshman year at times like this, certainly. And it sucked to certainly cover this basketball team. And I almost sound like a broken record every year or every week on my scouting reports and my radio show, and just add another additional one to that loss column every week. But, looking forward to seeing how this coaching search goes and where this team can really step it up, because I think there's some good names on this coaching hot board that can certainly uplift this program to what the bar is for Kansas State basketball.
Gilbert, I want to touch on something Grant said, because we've talked about that Elite Eight team, and there's no denying that Keontae Johnson and Marquise Noel were incredibly special. If we are going to say that the roster construction has been horrible the last 3 seasons, I think it's okay to say that the roster construction was pretty good that first year. But the problem is they didn't stick with that model. They didn't go get a pass-first point guard. Look what happened with Tyler Perry. You know what he was? He was a score-first point guard. What's P.J. Haggerty? He's a score-first point guard. What's Doug McDaniel? He's a score-first point guard. Marquise Noel was an assist That's what he wanted to do. He wanted to get assists, and they didn't try and repeat the success that they had. And so I think that's where people get a little confused, is there was a strategy shift along the way and it didn't work. And instead of trying to pivot and trying to fix, maybe going with what did work, they try to just do the same thing over and over again. And I don't know if you guys know what the definition of insanity is, but I just said it. So yeah, I mean, I'll give him credit for that first year. Yeah, obviously, maybe the X's and O's proved to be not that good. But if we're going to say that they were really bad roster construction the last 3 years, I think it's fair to say that it was pretty good roster construction, because around Keontae and Marquise, they had the right pieces. They don't have the right pieces, and they haven't had the right pieces around their studs the last few years.
The definition of insanity, Cole and Grant, is continuing to work for Fitz. I don't know why we do it. Year number one, and I'm not pushing back Cole, but that roster did work. Now, how much or how little credit Jerome Tang and his staff deserve for putting it together, I think, is a question, though. Did they just get lucky, or was it a calculated, this guy's going to do this, that guy's going to do that, or was it just, hey, let's get some dudes and throw them together, see what goes on?
Sure.
But not just with, like you said, a pass first point guard, but success can really change people, guys. You start getting NIL money, and you look at what you're able to do in your first year with not much at your disposal financially. And then you're thinking, man, if I get some dudes I can pay, and you bring in Coleman Hawkins, PJ Haggerty, millions of dollars to get players to Manhattan, success can change you. And so, and guys, let alone the high school recruits, that used to be a staple just in college basketball, period. And successful programs now maybe don't bring back the same starting five every season, Wyatt, but to have continuity is key in college basketball, pre-NIL, post-NIL.
It's amazing to watch the he's a Kansas State guy, and a lot of the conversation and argument over the last few weeks, as everything fell apart, as they're not playing hard in specific spots, whether it's the end of the Kansas game, so whatever you want to say about the Iowa State game, just the many times that they fallen apart late in games, and you're just like, do these guys care about the university? And that's a legit question to ask, especially in this era of college sports. It means something. Hey, even Jerome Tang said it in the press conference that got him fired. It's like, it's got to mean something to these guys to wear the uniform. And you can question that with a lot of stuff that goes on. And 95% of this roster is going to be gone next year. I think the only one you're really circling as a potential carryover is Taj Manning, just thinking that he can be a program guy. But program guy, you look at how Iowa State's built into a legit 1 or 2 seed here in the next couple of weeks, team that can win the Big 12 championship. Just being able to build through the high school ranks, develop, is just something that hadn't gone on over here. And of course, you can look to the types of the Keaton Wogglers and the people that got out of the state that to where it's just like, man, if you just have a guy like that, who knows what this season could have been if you're even looking at it. But they just stopped, just from everything I've been able to gather just from looking over the years. And they didn't adjust to this well. They didn't build well. And, there were some Kansas State guys that stayed when they went to that Elite Eight, made that Elite Eight run. And people that cared about the university wanted to play hard for it every night. They just haven't had that, especially this year when you're able to question their effort. And that's, we're always, every game we're going in, are they going to play hard this game, or are they going to finish it out? And, you get 36 minutes the other night, you get however many minutes it was against Colorado, and just it's just happened time after time. And even Driscoll said it the other night. It's just like, it's a broken record, and that's just kind of how this season's been for all of us.
There is 3 guys, at least in the state of Kansas right now, who K-State should have been recruiting, that are seniors in high school. If anybody lives in Kansas City, I highly recommend, I've said this on so many different podcasts, going out and watching the really, really good high school basketball teams in the area. There's 3 of them right now that are really dang good that can win the state championship. And for those people who might not know, one of the things I do along with a million other things is some play-by-play for the high school that I teach at Olathe North. And like, I get to see a lot of these kids in the Sunflower League. And I mean, the talent level in Kansas City for basketball has increased so much. And so when I see Keaton Wagler doing these things at Illinois, I'm not surprised because, guys, he did it in high school. Ethan Taylor's going to go to Michigan State. He's going to do the same thing. He was a part of that team last year. There are multiple guys in the Sunflower League, both in this class that's graduating, who are going to go play Division I somewhere else, and who are juniors who eventually will go play Division I, who there's just been no interest. And maybe that changes with the new staff. But you talk about program guys, Taj Manning, let's not forget, Bishop Miege kid from Kansas City. So there's something to be said for kind of locking down the area as well.
Cole, excuse me, Grant, we live like, what, a quarter of a mile from each other? I'm not sure if you guys could hear that train going by us.
Yeah.
And it was, Wyatt, you're all the way out in Colbert. You're fancy, my man, so you probably didn't get these trains that we have to deal with. But
I just get the bombs going off all the time.
Yeah.
So that's get plenty of that.
This backdrop on this side, on this right here, this fell over one time because of the Fort Riley booms were so booming. Go back to the development of this staff, though. And if we, guys, I think some of us might have been not surprised, but just a little caught off guard by CJ Jones and the steps back he took at Kansas State. But the writing, it really should have been on the wall. When Cam Carter, David Gasson, you do have not the entirety of your core returning, right? Marquise and Keontae leave, but players come back. And yeah, Naquan's a different story, but players come back and you missed the NCAA tournament. That should have been a waving red flag that development was just inevitably going to be an issue in this program, Grant.
Yeah, and you bring up a lot of good points there. And I think development was certainly one of the biggest issues that you can bring up with this staff. And not to say that Taj Manning didn't develop well, but I think he's been a great role player on a not very good K-State team. And I do think he developed and he's been a solid piece for this starting rotation that he's kind of had to step into due to injuries. And I think David Castillo's made a lot of jumps in his short development in his time at K-State. And I don't know if that's a guy that you're going to, kind of retain. And I think steps that go into retaining players is how quickly you find that next head coach and get them to stay. But I think another key thing that we could also get that you didn't get with Tang is Tang obviously was an assistant coach, right? So he didn't get to bring his entire team with him. If you go out and get, a coach from a mid-major program or a coach that has a strong pull with his players, you can bring those players with you, right? And that's kind of something you see throughout this new era of college basketball and football. So I think the development wasn't there with this staff, but I think there's a lot of opportunity to whoever that next head coach is to bring his team with him and truly, get them to develop under them. They know the head coach, they love him. So get them to develop, keep him under his wing, and also get to learn to love K-State. I think there's a lot of positives that could happen for K-State basketball going forward that just didn't happen with this coaching staff.
It'd be a breath of fresh air to go hire a dude and Bennett Sturts is following you. Indiana, DeVries, can we go hire Kansas State, hire somebody with a coach's son that plays? That'd really just be nice and easy. But yeah, it's a good point, Grant. Now, Kansas State, Gene Taylor said at that initial press conference that head coaching experience was what they were looking for. So to build a culture from scratch, you're probably not doing that. If you have a head coach who can bring one or two of his guys with him, I think you're going to be in a pretty good spot. And one thing I had marked down, guys, we did our Clint Stewart show with Curtis Kelly, J.O., some dudes that obviously played, and they had a little banter back and forth about Tex Winter and Mitch Richmond, all these old, the history of Kansas State basketball. You could ask, Wyatt, you probably don't know these people, but you could ask this team who these guys they're talking about. They'd have no clue. Now, I'm not saying anybody under Bruce Weber, Frank Martin, 1,000% would know, but if there's anybody that wouldn't know, it'd be this team, right? There's no true, real loyalty to Kansas State. Oftentimes, like PJ Haggerty, maybe Andre Kostic, I'm not sure of the ins and outs, but whatever the highest bidder might be, that might be where you end up.
Yeah, it's kind of how it is right now. And here's the thing too, guys. we act like this is unique to K-State, but it's really not. Like every single program that's having a down season is having the same conversation. Every single program that hasn't won at the level that they want to win is having the same conversation, right? Like any team that's failing is literally having the same conversation. So it's an epidemic across college basketball. If you're winning, the fans love it because you can go out. It turns into free agency. It's that dopamine rush. Wyatt, I know you got it covering the transfer portal in football where you're like, oh, who are they going to get? Like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Right? So you have that dopamine hits your brain and you're like, this is fantastic. But then when it doesn't work out, you're like, oh my God, this is horrible.
A couple questions from our subscribers at GoPowercat. We had a thread up in this afternoon. What do you guys consider a successful 5-year stretch in basketball from KSU Royals Cat? And for me, this is very simple. Did a double delivery on this a couple days back. Frank Martin was in Manhattan for 5 years, missed the NCAA tournament once, and even then had a 20-win season, Cole.
Yep, that's the answer to me. I mean, I think 5 years you have to make the NCAA tournament 4. I mean, at this point, I guess you could say 3. Like, let's say that 5-year stretch starts next year. I don't think anybody would be upset if this team doesn't make the NCAA tournament next year, as long as they are competitive in the Big 12.
And there's a future, there's a foundation, there's something to look forward to.
Correct. It can't get any worse. Well, I shouldn't say that, but it most likely won't get any worse. And so just building upon that, and then maybe making, what would it be, 3 out of the next 4 years in the NCAA tournament, to me, I think that'd be successful. Obviously, you want to go on a run, but at the end of the day, I say it all the time, Gilbert, you just want to be relevant. So if K-State basketball is relevant, couple that with, you would think, maybe a little bit more than relevance in football, and I think this fan base will be happy.
Wyatt?
Yeah, it's got to be competing for NCAA tournaments, and with the transfer portal era and everything, and if you're bringing over your own guys from would assume it's a successful program, whether we're looking at the St. Louis's or the Utah States or just some of those different programs that we have our eyes on. I mean, you're still, when you hire a coach and you bring him over and they're going to have it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the NIL dollars going forward after they've been so high the last few years. But you got to get the return on investment. And that shifts and changes some conversation in this current college athletic space. But typically those first year coaches, you give some leeway to say you're building something, get your culture in. I think West Virginia is a good one that we're looking at right now. I mean, they just come off of a big win over BYU. They come here tomorrow night, of course. But, I mean, that's a program that might be trending in the right direction now and just kind of needed something to just start getting going by the end of the year to where it's like, okay, there's hope for the future. And next year, go make the NCAA tournament. So I think that's a fair thing to do to coaches, but it's I can understand if people get upset if the return on investment isn't there, if the money's being placed at a high level within the program, and if a coach is bringing over his guys to try to compete right away.
Grant?
Yeah, I mean, both those guys brought up a lot of good points, and I think I agree with Cole on this one. I think make 3 or 4 tournaments, in a 5-year stretch is ultimately the goal, and you got to compete in a very tough conference in what is the Big 12, night in and night out. But you're not going to get Jerome Tang in his first year every single year. That's a 90, 100 times, that's not going to happen, right? And that was just lucky, and you're not going to go to the Elite Eight in a coach's first year. So get it settled down, build a culture. Get a head coach, get some guys over, get it set in stone, and then go make a tournament, right? Just be competitive. I think that's the biggest thing that all of us are issuing here. And I think every game K-State's played for the last, 2 months, I've expected K-State to lose, quite frankly, except maybe that Utah game. I want to go back to the times where I kind of have that crazy faith or just believe that there is a chance we can win this basketball game, because quite frankly, I haven't had that feeling in a really long time. And for me, and I'm sure all K-State fans, it stinks. So just be competitive in the Big 12, make 3 or 4 tournaments, and that's the biggest thing for me here.
If Jerome Tang can do it, they better be getting in the Elite Eight pretty quickly. I mean, what are we doing here? Final Four. I mean, it's
good point.
True.
Yeah,
Bring up a good point. And I think it was Big B. He said on one of our shows recently, if Cincinnati makes the tournament and wins the national championship, maybe Wes Miller stays. But Wes Miller, even if Cincinnati does go on a run right now, it'd be his first tournament bid in 5 years. And so it's much easier to judge somebody off of 5 years rather than the last, 3 or 4 weeks, West Virginia, where Cincinnati's been hot. And so Jerome Tang, again, last season, that 6-game winning streak, that was the outlier. That was the fluke. And so Cincinnati is just a great example, right? Even if they make the tournament this year, that's 1 out of 5. And that cannot be acceptable for what's viewed as not a top job in college basketball, but one that's going to be desirable for certain coaches. And as we kind of, shift over to football here, guys, our good friend El Camino Cat, do you believe that K-State Athletics should continue with a football-first funding model, or should we want big investment in basketball and the new staff? And I didn't include this, but Camino also kind of just mentioned with Jerome Tang about a month ago, it was don't pay the buyout, put that money to football. Should we keep that same mindset, Cole, or does that change?
You're going to put me on. You're going to make me be the bad guy here.
Yeah.
Here's my opinion on this. I think that right now you're looking at a football conference that has a clear number 1 spender in Texas Tech, that has a clear number 2 spender in BYU, and then literally everyone else. And if you are consistently finishing in the top 5 in your conference for football, there's no reason not to go all in on that sport. Because we're getting to a point now with the new college football playoff where if you make a top 16, a top 24, the revenue that you generate is going to be significantly more than making one NCAA tournament. And if you can consistently finish in the top 5 in the Big 12, you are going to have a chance to be in a 24-team playoff, to be in a 16-team playoff every single year. And if we're talking from a strictly business standpoint, there's no reason why K-State shouldn't be a football-first school. Every school should be a football-first school because that's what pays the bills. Basketball does not. And so if you want to win, yes, you should invest your money into football. K-State has invested a lot of money into football. And you know what's going to happen, guys? If they win this year, they're going to invest more into football. And that money's got to come from somewhere, right? We're already seeing it. We're not expecting that the new coach to come in and have a gigantic salary for basketball. I'm not expecting that. I'm expecting an NIL budget to be lower. I just am, because people, A, are bought into Colin Klein, and B, I think they understand that if you can consistently compete in a Big 12 that, I'll just be honest, I'm not going to say it's wide open, but there is an opportunity there to be competitive every single year, when in basketball, it's much harder to finish in that top 5. And so I think from a strictly a business standpoint, you have to go all in on football. You just do.
One thing to keep in mind, Wyatt, is a month ago, we all thought it would be $18 million, end of story, going to Jerome Tang. Now, whatever this ends up being, we remain to know that. That's yet to be seen, but it's probably not going to be the full 18. So one other aspect to maybe keep in mind.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's kind of what all Cole said there. But I don't think you want to let basketball be a sinking ship and take away a lot of things. It's, that's still months out of the year that people pay attention to your school and care about the school. And, the most attention Kansas State got this year as a university was that 1 week span between Jerome Tang going off in the press conference and going off in a press conference and getting fired for cause because it was on pardon the interruption and all those. So when I look at it, Cole's right. Football's the business thing that's going to make the most money. It's the thing you have a chance to compete in. It's what you have a chance to, I go as far as national championship, but it's get in the playoff. And so, I mean, that's where you're trying to get this. When I've been here, since I've been here, this is a football school. That's what this wants to be. It's what the people care about the most. And it's been, you go get Colin Klein to do this. You're going to you want to back your first-year head coach, your first-time head coach, and try to give him all the resources possible to be successful. Just because people love him, you don't want that to fail. He doesn't. It's somebody who's beloved around here that you want to be the head coach here for a long, long time. So that's you got to give him as much as you can to help him win. And I think that's something you're just going to see continue throughout all this. And it just adds another layer to make this all even more interesting.
I'd like to see basketball earn it maybe a little bit. Now, if you're a donor or somebody that's more in charge than me, you might think differently, and that's totally fine. However, to be fair, Colin Klein has proven absolutely nothing as a head coach, and so you can make arguments both ways. However, Colin Klein has obviously got more ties, and guys, he's Colin Klein. But Grant, should we do all the money goes to backup, third string, fourth string? I'm not sure what you were. Kickers from the 2022 Big 12 championship team?
Yeah, you could just put that in my bank account. I'll take it for sure.
Thoughts, though?
Yeah, I think if you asked me this question 2 months ago, I say take all the money from Tang, all his NIL money that he got, and just give it all to football and write out Tang for a couple seasons, get the buyout down a little bit lower, then go find a different guy. But obviously we live in a much different world than I thought was going to happen 2 months ago. But at this point, I think obviously a lot of it's got to be going to football, and Colin Klein certainly has a bunch of the support in the community. I mean, I went as Optimus Klein for Halloween when I was growing up. Like, I love Colin Klein, and I love K-State football, so I'd love to see them get a bunch of money. And like Cole said, you want to compete in a Big 12 and against the BYUs and the Texas Techs in the country, and you want to be in that 16-team playoff. So I think most of it's got to go to NIL and football and everything going on there. But at the same time, you've got to make this job offer appealing to, these college coaches in basketball you're reaching out to, right? You can't just tell them, hey, we're actually not going to give you that much money this time, right? It's all going to football. So you've got to give them a little something. But the one thing that's different this year, hopefully, obviously we don't have our guy yet, but you're going to get a head coach and hopefully brings some or part or maybe most of his roster over. You're not going to have to go buy guys in the portal, right? He's going to obtain them and he's going to bring them with him. So I don't think we're going to have as big of a budget in NIL in basketball as we've had previous years. But at the same time, you can't give them Jerome Tang money, but you got to give them a little piece of something. But most of it, 110% needs to go towards football.
I look at it, and it's just, this is going to be one of the best jobs that comes available in this coaching cycle, to where they're going to have a chance to get one of these top guys that everybody wants. When you're looking at the hot seat guys, whether it's Wes Miller at Cincinnati, Ohio State beating Purdue yesterday, that was huge for Kansas State. If they want Jared Calhoun, when you're looking at the Ohio ties there, just LSU maybe keeping on McMahon. I don't think that's going to happen, but they have a lot of money they could throw at somebody. Oklahoma's kind of question with Porter Moser, but there's not a lot of those high profile jobs that are going to come open to where Kansas State's going to be right there in the mix. And if you're taking away from what you're going to offer one of these top tier guys, whether that's a Josh Schertz if he gets into the mix, Jared Calhoun, Casey Alexander, you have a really appealing job here if you commit and still give him some of the things that you maybe gave Jerome Tang, maybe at a lower level, but it has a chance to be one of those top 3 jobs that comes available in this cycle. So I think that's something you can't lose sight of when you might have an opportunity to land one of these better guys.
Okay, let's talk about that. I want to dig into the Cincinnati stuff because I'm fascinated with this. First of all, we're talking about Jared Calhoun here. I think it's pretty clear that that's the name that K-State people are talking about. I think that is number one. And then maybe number 2, you hope for a guy like you mentioned, to Casey Alexander. Maybe Schertz starts to creep back into the picture. But I think right now Jared Calhoun is that number 1 guy. And people talk about, myself included, Cincinnati. And I mean, he spent time there as a student coach. This isn't a guy who spent 4 years and played there. This isn't a Colin Klein situation. I think that's number 1, important to keep in mind. He's an Ohio guy, and I get that. But you talked about Ohio State. I think that one would almost, if both of those jobs were open, I think Ohio State would be more appealing to him.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
that's something worth keeping in mind. But also, if Ohio State doesn't open, and even if Cincinnati does, can you guys sit here and tell me right now that Cincinnati is a better job than K-State? Because I look at recent history. Since Cincinnati's joined the Big 12, I mean, this is the best season they've had. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is the best season they've had since they joined the Big 12. They haven't been good since who was their coach? Was it Mick Cronin, the guy who's going crazy every single time at UCLA? Like that seems like the last time that
Are you raising your voice at me?
That's a scary man.
he is incredibly scary. You can't tell me that with a straight face that right now in 2026, Cincinnati is in so much better job than K-State. I don't believe that. So I do think K-State's going to have a chance with him. And, crazy stuff happens every year. Like crazy stuff happens guys, I'm just going to say this. I look what's going on with USC. I don't think Eric Musselman maybe is a better coach than Jared Calhoun, but there is going to be some big names who look at their current situation and say, you know what, maybe going somewhere else would be better. I have no idea who that is. I just use that as a random example. But I think that there's still some twists and turns in this thing, guys, where if this is a NASCAR race, we're on like lap 10 right now. We got a long way to go.
How many laps are there?
I have no idea. I don't want to.
Good
That
job.
was just a horrible analogy. I love them.
Oh, hey, most of yours are great, but Wyatt, I mean, you to the flip side of what you maybe said earlier is once the top maybe 2 or 3 dudes, Calhoun, Shirts, once that's dried up, if you don't land one of those big dudes, the number of slam dunk hires in this cycle are few and far between. So yes, Kansas State should be one of the most attractive jobs. However, if you don't get your guy, it starts to dry up pretty fast. Of course, K-State's going to get a coach, but the amount of fans are going to come on here and be skeptical. It's going to grow and grow the further down that list you go.
Of course. And that's where, you look at Shirts, and I think he's going to have a chance to sit back and decide if he wants to stay there another year. I think a lot of people look at I think people underestimate how much money St. Louis has. Just that, and that's one of the more delusional fan bases I've ever interacted with. But they have money at SLU, so he's going to be able to pick some things. I know he's going to lose Goggles, good old Big Robbie over there, and he hasn't coached without him since maybe his first year at Indiana State. So he might want to strike while the iron's hot, but Casey Alexander is just the next name on that big list where, he's had some NBA guys, hasn't been able to keep them at Belmont, but that's part of the mid-major job. And then you just keep going down, whether it's the Chris Mack at Charleston, whether it's the Eric Olin, New Mexico. And of course, Chris Chans keeps coming up, and Chris Holtman's been doing a pretty phenomenal job at DePaul when it's really hard to win at DePaul. But like you said, you just keep going down that list when there are the big fish at the top that you would love to be able to feel like that you're capable of landing here. But if you're not, that just kind of does that speak to what the Kansas State job is? Does that take away how much they're going to want to invest if they keep going down the list? And it's going to be fascinating what goes on here. But of course, they're out ahead of everybody. They're talking to people now. They're going to be able to go to some of these conference tournaments that begin this week, whether it's Casey Alexander starting at Arch Madness and just kind of these other names that are going to start popping up in the other conference tournaments. But it can get really interesting the longer this goes on.
Be intriguing to maybe know or not know how much money can be there to work with. Like we've talked about, how much should you give to basketball, to football? Where does that balance come? And, a month or two ago, like early on in Big 12 play, guys, it made no sense to pay Jerome Tang $18 million. You can still make that argument that it will never make sense. However, if you can get that number to go down, that's what's transpired. But, I think, we lose to Kansas, let alone what happened at the end on the court. You lose by a lot on your home court. And then Jerome Tang is throwing I think Nate and David Castillo under the bus.
Oh.
You lose to Iowa State by 1,000,000 points. I've got the schedule pulled up here. Cincinnati. I think we all know what happened then. And it was just like, okay, this is a dysfunctional, like you say, Wyatt, this is not, there's no light at the end of this tunnel. And I think early on in Big 12 play, remember the Creighton game, Mississippi State, there were some optimistic things about this team, but it became clear once the competition, that uptick came, and you start facing some real good opponents, that it makes more sense to take a financial loss, cut your losses, a sunk cost, right, and move on. And this ties into a new head coach. Well, you hope and pray it doesn't impact that too much, but there is going to be, I think, at least one penny that's going to be paid to Jerome Tang, whether that comes in court or a settlement. I'm not a legal expert, as you all know. But guys, football. Wyatt, we've been talking with assistant coaches. Today was Corey Patterson, Nick Toth, and I think we've all gotten along with these guys pretty well. I assume the same conversations are had with Chris Kleiman's initial staff, Jerome Tang's initial staff. I'm not going to act like this is groundbreaking news, but one thing interesting, Wyatt, on Monday today with Toth was he's coming from the Air Force, and maybe one thing you can bring to the table with that is the amount of practice time you get. It's less out there. What do you say, 17, 18 hours a week? That can add up, and how to be efficient. And he gave like a 2-3 minute answer, which is ironic. That's not efficient. But all these coaches seem to bring something to the table, right? You talked about St. Louis, the money they've got there. Corey Patterson's got the roots there.
Yeah, no, I think we sit there and, every time there's, once you get into recruiting and the transfer portal cycle, you're just like, oh, this is why this fits. This is why this makes sense. This is why this guy's going to break out, can make them a lot better. And we've kind of gone through the same thing with this coaching staff. It's just like, oh, that's why these chess moves for Colin Klein have made sense, just trying to build the staff and everything. And, whether it's getting a Corey Patterson, who's, he's coached some pretty good running backs. He brings a good one over from Oklahoma State, coached Chase Brown at Illinois. Now the Cincinnati Bengals starting running back. So it's like, he can go get St. Louis. Just everything in St. Louis is, like he said, if Colin Klein tells me to go get this guy in St. Louis, it's up to me to go get him. So it's every piece that we've talked to, everybody that we've talked to over these last few weeks, just comes across as making sense, as these guys also praise the person that Colin Klein is after every time we ask, just what impresses you the most. And it fires you up. It should fire you up if you're in the fan base, and just feeling like it's new, something that is going to get this turned around from the 6-6 team that it was this past season to where, just a batch of new faces just gives you hope to where you can be competing for championships like they were expected to going into last year, and just building it to what it should be and what they say it's going to be, whether it's the championship contender every year, the physical team that comes with playing at Kansas State that Colin Klein has envisioned here.
Yeah, Chris Kleiman and his staff, to its credit, was they were doing their best, but that's a group of coaches that simply were hired ages ago in terms of where this sport is at right now. And Cole, it's interesting. We talk about a head coach for basketball can maybe bring his players, but Oklahoma State, right? Running backs. This can happen too, where assistants know people. And I know Jareem Dowling didn't bring in Tyler Perry immediately, but Tyler Perry, North Texas, there's ties everywhere. And so that's also another, this coaching staff been recruiting and they've been building relationships, not just now, but relationships go back years, don't they?
This coaching staff is recruiting its butt off, guys. Like, I mean, as right now, like as we speak, there is a coach talking to a prospect, like plain and simple. And again, this is not to say that the other staff didn't do that, because you go back and you look, and Chris Kleiman's program got better and better and better when it came to recruiting. They got better and better and better at retaining talent. Right? This year, it just didn't work. And when he decided to walk away, so did everybody else. Right? Like that's just kind of how it worked. If Chris Kleiman would have stayed, these guys would have been back. K-State would have had a chance to be really competitive. We'd be talking about the ceiling for this team, and nobody would be mad. we'd be trying to talk about how they get better from last year. But the fact that they have these guys in right now, like, it's just a completely different way that they look at things, the way they attack the recruiting trail, the way they talk about the players during conditioning. It's different, and different can be okay. And I think different in this instance is going to be really good. And part of the reason I think that these coaches are going to be really good guys is because they're all really good dudes. Like, they get it, man. They get it. They know how to work with each other. They know how to work with the players. They know what gets kids to campus. That's number one. They know what gets kids to campus. And guys, they know how to get kids to campus. And in college football, man, I don't care what anybody says. The Jimmies and the Joes outdoes the X's and the O's every single time. And so getting guys on your football team who are really stinking good is really, I mean, that's the number one thing in college football. And again, there are some holes on this team. Like, let's not kid ourselves. There are some areas that I think I personally need to see before I feel confident in saying this team can compete for a Big 12 championship next year. But I mean, you don't have to squint to see this team being pretty damn good.
I like just on the recruiting aspect of it too. When I see them going after this Jake Narot kid, the quarterback, he's now taking off to where he's getting that 4th star, being considered one of the top quarterbacks in the country. They were already on him. They were already looking at him. They already identified that. So that's just one example to where it's just like there's some trust there that this group knows what it's doing. And getting into a Chicago area, getting into some of the St. Louis area, some of the places that maybe they haven't been as strong in the past, but they're identifying people and finding those sleepers, and the stars are following after they identified them and built those relationships to where they're going to have it seems like they're going to have a chance at some of these really, really good kids.
It's interesting too. Like, you go and look at the kids who have scheduled official visits. It's like 6 kids from Texas, 5 kids from Florida, 3 kids from Georgia. It's like, guys, that was not the recruiting base of the last staff. That's okay. Because you have to go out and you have to get the best players. And that's what Colin Klein talked about. And I think it's starting to come to fruition. Now, again, early, like obviously very early. We only know about the roster construction via the transfer portal. And I think they had some really good pieces there. So we'll start to see more how it progresses. But I think the early returns on the recruiting aspect are really, really positive.
Grant, as a former K-State kicker, how exciting is the Stanton Weber hire at special teams?
Yeah, I'm fired up, and I talked to Stanton for a little bit during a very early stage of recruiting process, but I'm really excited for special teams because, you know, you think of Kansas State football, one of the first things you probably think of is Bill Snyder and special teams, right? That's where K-State got their work done and, score a lot of touchdowns, make a lot of game-changing plays. And, you can flip a game by winning it with special teams, right? And a lot of people forget that. You think it's just offense and defense. But I'm excited for Stanton Weber to be back in the purple and white. And I think that's an area where K-State can certainly, maybe win some games that we lost last season if, you're competitive on the special teams front. And K-State just, quite frankly, wasn't competitive in special teams the last couple of seasons. And obviously you had a bunch of coaching changes in that room with quality control and special team coordinators, and it just simply didn't work out. But you bring back a guy like Stanton Weber who, loves Kansas State and hopefully can get some of those Kansas kids who just want to wear the uniform and go out there and, kick butt on the special teams front is something I'm pretty excited to watch upcoming this season.
It's one thing if you don't have the splash on special teams, but there were stretches later on in Kleinman's career where special teams were a true glaring negative, a weakness for his team, whether it was a fumbled punt here, a missed field goal there, a botched snap on a field goal there. Like, bring in Cole Carmody, a former long snapper. He could do a better job than that, just saying.
You know what's interesting is you look at special teams under Chris Kleinman, and you're right that those mistakes happen. You know what games special teams consistently won in Chris Kleinman's tenure against a common opponent? It'd be KU. Go back and think about those KU games. Chris Tennant drilling the field goal. The year before, the blocked PAT from Nate Matlack and Keenan Garber. The year before that, the muff punt from KU that Echo Boyd recovered on the 1 yard line, and then they ran ran it in for a touchdown. This past season, they didn't need special teams because they made a mistake.
Special teams did not get off to a great start in that game.
Right?
Oh, that's right. Oh, they're right. I totally forgot about that. Block punt for a touchdown. So special teams showed up against KU. So that's just
and Phillip Brooks had a couple of punt returns against KU in that COVID year, I believe, as well. So
there you go. Yep. So shout out special teams against KU, if anything else.
Yeah. Wyatt, special teams U is what they call this place, man. It matters a whole lot to this fan base if you haven't caught on. You know what, guys? People talk about the frat house, okay? Go back to kind of these coaches. It's been fun to joke about, Wyatt. I've seen you've been writing about this as well. At the end of the day, though, these guys are pretty much living at Veneer. And so they've got a bed. It sounds like they maybe have some dinner. They might watch, I think, what was it, Nick? Or one of the coaches today mentioned that, Wyatt.
Todd said that they watched the news together, about 15 minutes of the news. It was listening to him a little bit after that we got done with the talking to them. They're talking about, he's saying how it took him a few weeks or months to realize that Colbert was a golf course because he's getting up really early in the morning, driving when the sun's not out, driving to the football complex. They're working there all day. And then at night when the sun's down, they drive back to Colbert. And it's like you've never seen that the golf course is there until one of these random mornings that they got to sleep in a little bit. And it's like, oh, there's golf out here. So the frat house is funny. They have there's 5 guys in there that are all different ages and everything, just hanging out. And, it doesn't sound like the keggers are going on or they got the Greek letters outside the house. But just a funny thing that, they talked about. It's just the camaraderie that builds, and for the lack of a better word in this case, the brotherhood that this builds amongst each other. So it's been a funny thing. That's there's been a few things with this new coaching staff that has kind of caught on with the social media and everything that people really enjoy, and the frat house is one of them, and they'll be there until the families all come down. So it's just a funny thing. It's a good time.
When the families all around, when the fun ends.
Gilbert, if there was a frat house in Colbert Hills, how many times do you think you would apply to try and live there? Because I can only imagine what that place looks like if that were to be.
Well, Wyatt, you live out there. Have you done your journalism reporting, investigating, and found this house?
I haven't. I'll have to drive around a little bit. It's dark now, so maybe they are getting done over there. I'll camp out outside Veneer and follow them home, maybe. But no, I'm not.
We can tag team it when I'm on one of my walks at Colbert.
Yeah.
Right, my sunlight in.
Sometimes I'm driving home and there's a shirtless Ryan walking around and just trying to get some sun that this redhead can't get. So he's getting it for everybody. So it's. Shirtless Ryan is a sight to behold when you're driving home.
I gotta start charging you guys for that.
Ooh.
And Derek for that matter as well from KSO. DY lives. Are you guys in the same building?
I think he's my neighbor.
So I'll drive by DY all the time. I'll drive by you, and
I think he's on the other. I think he's literally on the other side of the wall. It's just we park on opposite sides of the building, and we've just never run into each other. But I think we're neighbors.
We got to do some investigating on that. Cole, I want to wrap this up with you with baseball. And it was obviously a really good start to the year for the Batcats, but recently some struggles for this team.
3 in a row, losses in a row before the 2 wins to end up taking 2 or 3 from Columbia. This is the crazy thing. So they lost 1-0 against Louisiana, not Louisiana Lafayette. If you call them that, they get very mad. They are the Raging Cajuns. So Louisiana 1-0. They lose in 11 innings, 2-1, or 3-2, or 4-3. 1-run loss. Then they lose to Columbia by 1. So that's 3 straight games of 3 1-run games that end up in losses. You don't see that very often in the game of baseball. And then they were able to come back and win game 2 of the doubleheader on Saturday by 1 run before they won 5-2 against Columbia. And as I was able to catch up with someone inside the program, they said, you know what? Sometimes baseball just sucks. And I responded with, yeah, but when you're on the other side of 1-run games, then it feels a whole hell of a lot better. And I think that this team kind of got its mojo back. Although I will say the offensive struggles last week were a bit perplexing because the teams that they played in Arizona, the teams they played in Texas have really kind of showed their true colors, and they're going to be pretty good. UConn was really good after that. Michigan's been pretty good. Nebraska's been fantastic, who K-State beat. So those were good teams. I'm willing to say that that is more of the real K-State than losing 3 games by a combined 3 runs. I don't care who it's against. Sometimes that's just going to happen. And they have a nice long week of practice this week before they get set to do battle with SIUE in the St. Louis area as well. So it'll be fun. It'll be an interesting watch. They've got a really, I don't want to say easy stretch of games coming up, but they have a chance to stack some wins, and getting that split on Saturday and at least taking the series, that was so paramount, because if you lose a series to Columbia, who I think is going to be even though I think they're going to be an NCAA tournament team, it's not a good look on your resume, but I would say they'll be able to bounce back. I really believe that.
It's a long season, and I don't know much about baseball, but even the best MLB team in history loses 40, 50 games in a year, right?
You would be correct. There is 162 games. So if you lost 40 games in a year, then you're like probably the best team ever. But yeah, I mean, look, you lose 3 games in a row in college baseball. It's like probably going on like a 5 or a 6 game losing streak in the major leagues. You're gonna be able to bounce back. So I'm really not too worried. I do think it's worth noting that Carson Liggett came out in the first inning on the game 1 of Saturday's doubleheader with an apparent injury. We've yet to really hear what happened there. It's a guy coming off Tommy John surgery. So be interesting to follow that. But as bad as the bullpen was in game 1 of the doubleheader, they stepped up. So shout out to those guys. And if you're a K-State fan and you haven't gotten into to baseball much, I highly recommend it. They're a fun team to watch. The production on ESPN Plus is absolutely incredible. The atmosphere at Toynton Family Stadium is fantastic when the weather is amazing. So I highly recommend investing your time into this team, because I think it's going to pay off in the end.
Don't take Cole's word for it. EMA 10 is a fortune teller, and the Batcats are going to win the Natty. So There you have it.
All right.
Appreciate you guys. Fun show, gentlemen. No Fitz, no Big B. It was a real different crew, but I think we made it work. Okay.
Good job.
I've got to go check on my weather app, because I got to see when it's going to warm up so I can go walk around Colbert, and me and Wyatt can link up for our little investigating. Okay.
I'll have the money ready for you, because pay for my views. So yeah.
All right. There you have it. Get your cash ready. Appreciate you guys listening.
Thank you for watching the K-State Insiders. This has been a GoPowercat.com and Spirit Street production.